Hi, this is Yowie from Crankwheel. Just a brief video showing you how to use multiple instant demos widgets and how to manage different teams of agents if you want to for the different widgets. So by default, if you have enabled instant demos, and maybe you're an instant demos user already today, you'll see something like this on the instant demos pane. And you'll just see the one widget, the team that is handling, you'll be able to see under access control, where you'll see check marks like this next to anyone who is handling demos. But if you want, you can have more than one widget, and once you have more than one widget, you can also have more than one different teams of agents handling requests from widgets. And the idea with the teams is that any agent can be in either no team or one or multiple teams. So teams can overlap. So you might have, let's say, a default team of 10 agents, and then 3 of those plus one additional agent who's not on the default team could be on a separate team. And each widget that you configure is handled by exactly one team. So let me walk you through all of that. So if you want to add the first instant demos widget beyond the first one, you simply click here. You need to give it a name, just lowercase letters. You can also use numbers. So let's call this one London. This could be, if you're using that widget for a different product or a different product line or a different category of customer, you can give it a name that describes that. And just a note that you cannot change widget names after they're created. You can, however, delete widgets, and any widget except for the default widget, you can delete them and then recreate a similar widget if you wish. All right, let's create the widget. So now that I've created the widget, it shows up here in the list of widgets. So there's the default widget that I cannot delete, but I can edit. And there's now the London widget. Now if I click on the London widget, this will show me here. I cannot change the name here, but I can delete the widget, or I can configure this widget. And I'll just show you what happens if I configure. So now I'm in the configuration editor configuring this particular widget, and you can tell which widget you are editing from this drop-down menu here. And you can switch between widgets. So if you want to switch to edit the default widget, you can do so right there. And this widget will have a completely separate set of messages from your default widget. And once you've created a widget, you can choose a template that you want to start from. Let's say you want to start from Spanish language widget, just a very simple get a call to action. You could do that by doing like this. And now that template has been applied. You can see everything that's been changed in the messages editor. It's orange. And if you wish, you can publish those changes. So let's discard them for now and go back to the dashboard. And I'd like to show you another way that you can go to configure widgets. So you can go in to configure instant demos, as you may already be used to. That just opens the editor for whichever widget you were configuring last, and you can switch widgets here. So it's the same as you saw earlier. Also, once you have more than one widget, you get different sets of instructions here. The JavaScript snippet that you need to place on your page, this is always the same, independent of the number of widgets that you have. And you don't need to place multiple JavaScript snippets or anything like that. You just use the same snippet that you already have on, well, if you're already using instant demos, you would already have this on your page. So you don't need to worry about that. However, to launch the widgets, you need to do different things. So to launch the default widget, this is all the same as you may be used to already. You can launch it by using a URL like this, although you might be using this URL. You can use the full URL with the widget name on the end, /default. You can call the JavaScript API showyou.launch. That's what's been supported already, so you may be using that already. Or you can add a CSS class. Crankwheel.com showyou launch button is the class. Now for the other widget, the London widget, you'll see that the CSS class for that widget changes a little bit. The email campaign URL for that widget changes a bit. It has London in it and London here as well. And if you want to use the JavaScript API, you give it a parameter, a string London. So those are the differences in terms of launching different widgets. So you could have, on the same page, you could have different buttons, one that opens the default widget and one that opens an alternate widget, just by using different CSS class or different attribute on a clickable element or a different JavaScript API call. Now, one more thing to manage teams. So for as long as you have just the default team, any request coming in through any widget will be routed to the default team. So the default team, as I said, is shown here under access control. Anyone who has a check mark here is in the default team. And this is how it's shown while you have just the one default team. Now, if I add a team, let's say for the London widget, let's say that's just for a London-related product, and there might be a team of salespeople, a group of salespeople who are specialists in that, and I want only those salespeople to receive requests from the London widget, whereas the default widget will go to everybody in the default team. So I can add a team. We can call it anything we want. You could just call it London if there's a one-to-one mapping between the widget name and the team. That's fine. I'll call it London Specialist, and let me add a couple of users here. All right, and create team. Now I've created that team. If I click the team in the list, you'll see that I can edit who is on the team, and then save the team. I can delete the team, which in this case would take me back to having just the default team, or I can just cancel my edits. Okay, and now that I have multiple teams, when I go in and configure widgets, let's look at the default widget. You'll see that there's a new tab here, Set Team, and in this tab you can choose which team handles this widget. So we were going to change the London widget to be handled by the London Specialist team, and now I can apply this without publishing. These changes are pending, just the same as if you're changing any messages and such. Those changes are pending until you either discard them or publish them. So if I publish those changes, it'll tell me that it's been published. I can go back to the dashboard, and let's look at the access control list now. It changes a little bit. So it'll either show an X indicating that this user is not in any demo teams, or it'll show this little list icon, which indicates that the user is in one or more teams. And we'll see that this user is only in London Specialist, and this user is only in default, and this user is only in London Specialist. And I can also change the teams that particular user is in just by changing it like so. And if they are in all teams, it'll show as a check mark. So this icon says they're in some teams, this icon says they are in all instant demo handling teams, and the X says they are in none of them. These things can also be edited here for the user. So here you'll see the membership in instant demo teams, so I can change that right there. Go back to the access control, and I'll see that that user now shows up with the list icon. All right, so that is the overview of how to work with multiple widgets and teams in instant demos. Hope that's useful, and as always, if you have any questions, you need any help with anything, don't hesitate to email us at support@crankwheel.com. Thank you.